Silkypix Developer Studio Pro 12 is the newest version, just came out not too long ago. Before I jump into the overall tutorial, there are a couple of things that I would like to mention. First, I am going to speak very, very slowly. It's because this takes a lot of time and energy, and I would like to articulate as better as possible due to my accent, due to the clarity of the tutorial. Second, please come back to this tutorial if necessary, because this is going to be a little bit too long. So of course, I highly recommend you to save this video in your playlist. Third, I would really appreciate if you can help me any way you think it's appropriate, whether it's by donation or by buying my photos, or by using the affiliate link in the description below, or finally by just leaving a comment below, because I might not be perfect, but I do take it seriously. So any of your verbal or action or personal action are very motivating. Now let's jump in. This is the interface when you open this software. Now that's the select tab. This is where you open the images. You go through all your selection. Here you have only one image, but let's say if you go to different tab, you have plenty. There you can directly start them if you want. You can tag them with different colors. You can delete marks if you want. For instance, you can use different type of tags if you want to, and so on. You can make the thumbnails a bit bigger at the bottom right and left. You can look for your images with the file name and different elements, of course, with the ISO, speed, F number, focal length. I don't know if you can see it. There you go. And you can filter them if you want to, as you prefer. I mean, select section is generally renaming, organizing. You can rename your images by selecting one or multiple image. Right click and batch rename, let's say, and you can rename them as you prefer. I already renamed it, but depends on your images. You can rename them with multiple options. Then you have edit tab, tool tab. Let's say you go to tool tab. You have plenty of tools available, which is also available at the top, but let's stay at the select tab first before we go to adjustment tab. Now you have view tab, where you can modify how and what you like to be viewed on your working space. You have the parameters, then development. I highly recommend you to modify it as per your necessity. Depends on how you want to export your images. You have settings, the file output setting, display setting, pretty important to make sure that your images are being shown properly. You have function settings, where you can select the minimum and maximum threshold of different options. Also important to select the performance, where you can select the cache, maximum, restriction, or minimum. I select to standard. And you can also select a temporary folder. Then of course you go to help if you want to open the manual. Highly recommend you to time check for updates or open the manual if you have any problem. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to waste too much time here, because I think those who are already used to the previous version, you should already know about those. I'm going to change my tab to, let's say, the turtle, just for fun. Now, when you select an image, now in the new interface, you have just in the middle, adjust this image button, which is literally the adjustment tab, but what I understand that they put that in the middle for your flexibility, so that they made it a bit more pragmatic, in my opinion, because if you click the adjustment, it will take you to the same tab as if you click this image. Essentially is that they do the same thing. However, This one is just an extra advantage so that you don't have to look for different area. I appreciate their effort. Now let's just click this image, and I'm going to go to Adjustment tab. Once you go to the Adjustment tab, you are pretty much aware of 90% of this interface. I'm sure about it. Now let's start from the left. Now you can go to the tools, and you have exact same tools as at the top middle or at the bottom left, which is fantastic. I'm not going to waste too much time on almost most of the tools that you are familiar with, or tools that are pretty obvious. Now at the left, you have this button that takes you to the folder, so you can go to the folder and open the folder that you would like to edit. Pretty much similar to the other software such as DxO. Capture One, I believe you need to import, if I remember correctly. On One, on the other hand, you don't have to import. You can open the folder directly. Luminar, you have to import, if I remember. So different software has different way. I like this way much better. Then the next tab takes you to the metadata. Now you have a little change. You have a new tab. That's where you see all the history of your edit, which used to be on the right hand side. Same goes for this one. So you have this wheel button that saves all the parameters or text, another way to say preset. Then you have a hot folder. Well, I don't really personally care about that part, but a lot of people really appreciate these tools if you want to take this pretty seriously. Now, on the top, you have another app button on the left hand side. When you click it, you have to register an application. Let's do that just for an example. I will click Add. I'll select an application, and I have a list of software such as Affinity Photo, Photo Express Viewer, Luminar Neo, or anything else. Either you select one of those if that's the one that you are looking for, or if you don't have that on the list, you can click Other. And let's say I want to select Nick Collection. That would be in DxO. Then I can select Nick Collection and the bin. And then I can select all of those, anything that's finished with whatever software .exe. So let's say I'm going to select Silver FX and open. Now you have it. Now you have to select the format. Of course, TIFF is the best. If you're asking me personally, I would stay with JPEG because honestly, I would do the majority of my edit here anyway. It's just for the filters, probably I would use Silver FX. And I'm not that snobby. That's just my choice. Then I'm going to click OK. And I personally recommend you to change this folder, which is, let's say here you have the temporary storage folder for image. I would open and create another folder, anything other than C. So whatever else, so that your C folder remains just for the software, nothing else. I'm just going to keep it as it is. Now on the top, you have this typical crop tool. You have the rotation tool. Works well with horizon or architecture, but I don't need it now. You have the perspective correction tool. Any perspective, horizontal, vertical, or all of it. You have the exposure bias tool. That would be appropriate if I change this image to something else. I'm going to go back to select, or I'm going to go to folder directly from there and select, let's say, tutorial, this folder, or here, this is a perfect image to show you some of the tools. Much better. For instance, I'm going to do that first. Make sure that it has a nice open space. Let's say I'm going to do some crop and then just simply close it. By the way, in the crop tool, you have this little tool that expand the crop. If you have extra spaces that generally the software doesn't show. It's very excellent if you want to, discover more spaces. If you raw records them. I'm going to go backward, go down a little bit, unselect that, and that's about it. And then, you know what? Now that we are here, let's do some fun. In the perspective tool, I'm going to do all of it. Now, let's select this little square. I'm going to be a little bit silent here. And now, let's zoom in a little bit. The zoom tool, zoom in, make sure that I have everything correct. This case, see, this is not automatic like DxO viewpoint. DxO viewpoint is, for me, probably the best in the world when it comes to automatic correction. But this particular one allows you to, fine tune it as you prefer. Right? Make sure that they're all straight here as well. And double click and boom. So I don't know if I can show you before, after. There you go. Before, after, before, after. So, it works quite well. I'm going to actually save it, keep it as it is, because I quite like it. Now, we have done that. Now, where were we? You have all this tool, exposure bias tool, adjust exposure based on the area. For instance, if you take the exposure bias tool and select on the brightest area possible, it will do different than, I'm going to do Control Z. If you select the darkest, let's say, hypothetically, one of the darkest area possible. For instance, not that, somewhere here in the balance. So what's happening when you select the darkest area, it makes the whole image bright, and it does more or less the opposite if you select different area. Now let's say I'm going to select the gray area. This is gray. What happens? So it's going to try to make that part as bright as possible. This is particularly effective if you have a person, let's say this person on this book of Agatha Christie. Let's say I want to make this person bright. So it will make sure that person's skin tone is well protected and well exposed, but at the cost of surrounding. But anyway, you have the point now where I'm going with this. Now, second one is the gray balance tool. So gray balance, of course, is to fix the white balance. You get the idea. Now you have the black level tool. So black level tool is pretty much to the exposure. They kind of overlap with each other. I'm going to show you the example first. Let's select the white checker. In the white checker, I'm going to select this bright area. You see, it's doing, let's say, opposite of the exposure, kind of. So what I mean, if I take the exposure bias, select and drop it on the white area, it makes it more bright. Now if I take the black level tool and drop it on the dark, it does the opposite. It's try to make it as low as possible. So the example give you an explanation what it does. Skin color tool, again, let's try it on this image of book of Agatha Christie. Now let's do this. You see, it's doing two things at once. Two things. It, again, just like the exposure bias tool, but unlike exposure bias tool, meaning that it's trying to make sure that the skin is well exposed. 1, 2, also perfectly white balanced. So it's a mix of exposure bias tool with the gray balance tool that used specifically for the skin tone. Pretty amazing. Chromatic aberration tool, I don't have much of a chromatic aberration in this particular image, but at least if you have any chromatic aberration on the edge, I recommend you to use it on the edge. Gray balance tool for underwater photo. Let's try this image. No, not this one. This image. Or even better, this image. This is an underwater image from the aquarium. Now, is it a perfect image? Of course not. Objective is that to show you what happens when you use this underwater photo. Let's say you have this dominated green green tone, kind of. So this gets quite confusing in my opinion because I don't have any white spot here. So I'm going to just try and drop it. And you see immediately it tried to eliminate the green kind of tint and balance it out with the red tint. So you can do whatever you want after that. Now, here is another example. Let's try again, same on the green. So if it's too green, it does too much of a reddish tint. So don't recommend it. But if I do that on the fish, somewhere relatively, gray, it might work. So underwater remains a very good tool, but you need to manually process it. Then, of course, you have this negative film inversion tool. Do I have any negative? There you go. So negative film inversion, by the way, it's a bit tricky one because it doesn't work all the time. I'm going to show you something. If I select that tool and do it anywhere, it doesn't work. So what happens? You actually have to zoom in as much as possible and find the darkest area of the film strip. Let's try this dark area at the very bottom that I've got left. Still doesn't work. So it's a very tricky kind of tool because it expects you to have a kind of like a dark area where you can drop it. So unfortunately, I don't have, I kind of deleted the border. So it doesn't work. So I'm going to try with this image. I hope that I get some sort of luck in this image. So anything that extremely dark, let's say here, does it work? It doesn't. So I apologize. My trick doesn't work. The tool doesn't work because I have deleted the border. I'm gonna go give a last final try. No, that's a shame because I was very excited about the tool. Seems like you really need the film strip on the side in order to show you the result. Well, that's life. But you have the choice. Now, partial correction tool. So I'm going to go back to our old image tutorial. Now, partial correction tool. Let's make this workspace a bit bigger. But I skipped a couple of things. Spotting tool and retouch brush tool. I sincerely not going to show you. I apologize, but I think it's a waste of time. You know already if you are familiar with any kind of photo editing software. They do what they say. So I'm going to jump into my favorite area, partial correction tool. Now, partial correction tool, it's the local adjustment. In there, it's very small, but I assure you, this is probably one of the most well-advanced local adjustment tool that I've seen in any photo editing software. So I'm going to make it as big as possible for you. As big as possible without, of course, ruining the workspace. Now, how does it work? I start from the top. You have this circular tool. You select the circular. It will automatically select the circular. And by default, it will adjust the brightness to 200 to show you exactly where is it. Now imagine you don't want that, of course. I wouldn't. You go back to 0. Now you don't know exactly where precisely it is. What would you do? Now let's bring it over here. You have this button on the top that says emphasize partial correction filter areas. That works for anything here. So you select it, it immediately gets red. Now you can actually move this thing wherever you prefer. For instance, I'm going to bring it over here. Now I'm going to show you something interesting here. Before I go any further, once you select it, of course, you can select the feather. You want more feather or you want a bit more precise, which bizarrely does not show it actually. It's just a very brief circular. Normally I wouldn't mind to show the effect of the feather though. So that's a little bit of, that's an update they have to do, I think, but I personally don't care. But apart from that, you have the usual suspect: hue, saturation, lightness, which is brightness, contrast, and clarity. So you know what they are. At least you should, or I judge you. Now that's that. It doesn't finish just there. Now go to the next tab, select color to be corrected. Now in this color checker, this is a good example. Imagine, I'm going to get rid of it, that you don't want to have this impact on the whole color checker. You want to only want to work on some particular color here. For example, the green color checker. Now, how would you do that? Let's say if you want to select on this green, this kind of yellowish green or dark green. You have this tool, you go back to the partial correction tool. You select the color selection tool, then select on, let's say, as I said, this green color. Check this one out. All of a sudden, the select color is changed to green. Haha. Or you can, of course, select from the list here, of course. Now, how would you know that it changed? You see that the little emphasize color that I clicked earlier that had a round circular red disappeared, except on the green. Do you want to see? Before, after. So it says that it's impacting this green here. Now, how do you know that it's going to change? What's going to happen exactly? Let's say I'm changing the hue to, I don't care, whatever. Aha, did you see? It changed color. Now, you want to be a bit more precise. So 1 to 180. So 1 go to very precise, 180 very broad. Let's do that for example. All the way to 180. And then change the hue. So it's impacting the circles here of not just green, but a little bit light green and the dark green. Or range goes to close to 1. So it's impacting very precisely some of the green, if not just a very little. So 45, it's a good area to use to impact on the entire green area. So you can go a little bit far if you want. And you can see the change. Same goes for the lightness, more bright, less bright, and clarity, and so on. In this button, you can see the preview selected color. So this is where the famous, the black and white mask. So it's basically the luminosity mask, let's say. So if you click it, it immediately shows which color you have selected. Let's say I want to go to red now. So it shows all the red. If I want to select all the green, I think the green it's outside the circle. So if I move around, it might be able to show. Yeah, it's far from. I can make this circle quite big, and then let's see if I have a luck. There you go. Finally, or for example, yellow, or I think it's skin tone, so I don't know what color it calls. But anyway, you get the idea. But my point is that this partial correction tool is pretty phenomenal, very simple, easy to use. Now there is, of course, other suspect available. I'm going to delete this mask. You have the gradient tool, of course, as usual. I'm going to delete this. You have the brush tool. You have the curve tool. So, of course, much better and much more flexibility. Delete this. Or even better, polygon tool. I love this tool. It can be very precise and you can edit with the precision. Let's check it out. Let's go for the feather. You see that it also only impact on the area you selected. And polygon tool is very, very, very flexible. How long have I been recording? I've been recording for a while though. 33 minutes. If you want, take a break, come back. I continue. Now, let's go back to my polygon tool. And I'll go to select color to be corrected. Let's show you the area that I've selected. Let's say again, exact same tool. I'm going to select some sort of color. I would say orange. And if you want to know exactly where it's been impacted, boom, you see a lot here and very close to other color, but very lightly, because of course, colors are not very precise. They overlap with other color. And you might be wondering why you have a little bit of leaking here. Because orange is close to this one, because it's close to skin tone. I'm going to show you now. If I move it over here and show you, you see that they overlap. They are close. So you can select the range and play with this. Now, of course, at the bottom, you have the typical suspect as I showed you, the hue, saturation, color, lightness, etc. But you also have the white balance fine adjustment, which is pretty much, local way to apply tint. Then you also have the effects. That's new. In the effects, you can use blur. Let's blur the hell out of it, but not in all color. I would select all of it and make the whole thing blur. Or you can adjust local sharpness. That's amazing. You can locally add sharpness. You don't need to have a super sharp image corner to corner, of course. Some blur is beautiful art. Anyway, apart from that, there is something else I would like to show you that I don't have it activated, which is add object information filter. So if a DNG file with object information is selected, add an object information filter. So this is not a DNG, this is a raw file. But if you have a smartphone DNG, generally it's more useful. So unfortunately, I cannot show you. But before I go, I might have some luck. So I'm going to change and I'll select different folder. I have a folder somewhere with plenty of images like that. And some of them are DNG. So I don't know which one though. Probably. If I go to adjustment and open any image, it does not show still. So unfortunately, it's not necessarily useful all the time. So there it is. I have a lot of explanation already done. Now let's go to the bottom part of it. In the bottom part, if you can select, of course, as usual suspect like that, side by side. You can change the reference image to different image if you want. Then full screen, you have the zoom tool. In the zoom tool though, you have this new loop tool. So if you click the loop tool plus 1 click, 2 click, 3 click, 4 click, 5 click, 6 click, you know what I'm going with this. It zoom in pretty much all the way to I say 1000, 1200, damn, 1600. So we can pixel peep the hell out of it. And then if you loop tool zoom out, then each click will take you back few bit of a distance, but very gradually, which is amazing. You have the palm tool, then you can use the palm to move around if you want. You can fit a display. So go back to the whole image. Then you have the warning tool. Remember those warning tool? So highlight warning, shadow warning, both oversaturated or not, soft proofing, and focus picking. So it will show you exactly where it's focused. So it's focused because it's infinity. So it focused pretty much everywhere, in my opinion. So disable warning, I don't really need it. That pretty much cover quite a bit. Now let's go to the fun part. In the fun part, you have the histogram. You can close the histogram if you want, or you can open it. In the parameter control, you have the default preset. Then you can select each preset, depends on what kind of look you are looking for. I personally would start with any of those presets. Ooh, this is good. This is, I like it. This infrared type look. Anyway, I'm getting distracted, but I'm definitely keeping it for my future edit. So yeah, you can select different kind of preset. They're pretty amazing in my opinion. They look good. And then from there, you can modify your look. Then you have this quick and advanced. In the quick, you have all the usual suspect: exposure, color temperature or white balance. You have the color deflection. Why they use this kind of English, I don't understand. Color deflection is tint, too red, too green, in between. Sing a song with me. Too red, too green, in between. All right. Contrast, HDR. So HDR would be very good in this image. Not this one. That one. You say that some part is super bright, some part is super dark. So I'm going to slide it all the way to close to 50. What happened is that it recovered shadow while it's trying to recover highlight. So it gives you quite nice flat image. Handy tool. Otherwise, you have the independent highlight shadow tool. You have the white label. So remember, there's a difference between white label and brightness. White label generally focus on not the shadow, but the second bar after the shadow in the histogram. Pay attention to the histogram as I'm moving forward. So you see what's going on. So the black label, more you go forward, it gets darker, 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 darker. But it's not like an exposure. Exposure moves from 0 to 255 forward or backward. For white level or black level, they start from 0 or 255. Then you have the saturation, global sharpening, smoothness. Smoothness is actually, I'm going to double check with I button. So if you have any confusion, always click the I button. So I'm going to click the I button. And it does not show. So smoothness, in my opinion, if I zoom in, if I go all the way to 100, it makes the image more smooth. If I go backward, it takes away the smoothness. This is a good thing if you want to work on your portrait image. It's good for the skin tone. Then, of course, the rotation, you can go back and forth. It's pretty amazing how it's all sorted out. Let me show you. Before, after, before, after, before, after. Then I showed you whatever it is I showed you, but you have the initialize, so it's kind of like a reset. You have the automatic adjustment. If you click the automatic adjustment, it use all this default setup to fix it in one click. I'm going to go back. Something that if you want to don't waste too much time and then move straight forward. Then you have the advanced tool. In the advanced, you can either, work separately as a different tab, or open directly from here. So same as the quick, each individual tool, I'm going to open it without explaining too much. You have the white balance preset. Of course, you don't need to really use it. You can just put your cursor and it will show you the effect. Then you have the color deflection, again, tint. Dark adjustment, really, adjust the cast that occurs only in the dark area. Only in the dark area. So this is something amazing when you want to adjust the tint of the dark area only, while the rest remains same. Multiple source color compensation. This is generally amazing when you are working with the image that is taken indoor with multiple light source. However, you have this auto area specification. So if you select, for instance, this tool, gray balance tool, and select on it, it will select the gray balance. I'm going to go back. Now, here's the fun part. The moment you select the auto natural or auto absolute, let's say auto natural, you have this auto area specification button available. You enable it. Now immediately you see that it's taken the area here. What if you change it to somewhere else? Let's say, what happens? To do so, you zoom out. Make sure you make it relatively as small as possible. Now check this one out. Moment that I move it to different location, the white balance changes. So it's kind of analyze a part of your image for the whole image. So if I bring it over here, for instance, good thing is that I also have different color, but I also have the different shades from dark to white. So therefore, it's not going to be super duper crazy. However, if I make it super small, and now if I bring it over in the colorful area, see that the white balance is kind of going crazy all over the place. So this is useful if you want to pay attention to, for example, this person, where your white balance should be perfect and you don't care about anything else, then this tool comes in handy. I'm going to reset and go back to original. So that's white balance. You have the tone. In the tone, you have this same tool like before. However, apparently the dehaze, they improved much better. And you also have a soft slider. Let's try those tools because I'm very excited. So I'm going to go to portrait. I'm going to select, let's say, this image. Now if I select soft, see, for portrait, it works pretty well because, you know, you have this nice glowy look, but not just for that, even for the, it also work impact on your brightness though. So be careful on your exposure, but it removes all the harsh highlight, which is amazing. However, where I was going, I was gonna go for test image. Let's try on a landscape. If I look onto the list and select something nice, for instance, this one, I let it settle for a little bit. I'm going to temporarily stop doing any kind of no sharpness and no noise reduction, for instance, that. Now going back to the tone, because those two are kind of making my software too slow. So I'm going to turn the slider up again to all the way up. You see, it's making the image nice and soft. It actually works nicer, on my opinion. This type of image, much better. Not this apple, of course. There you go. Check this one out. I think we have a winner in this image. So if I zoom in and take the slider all the way up, aha! Now we have a nice and beautiful, soft, glowy look. And if I try on, let's say, this image and try the same soft, it's pretty nice. I like it. It gives a nice kind of glowy look, which I started to dig it. I wouldn't overuse it though. For instance, I could reduce the softness just a tad bit to make sure that it has a foggy look. Now the clarity. So going back to this tutorial, for instance, I need something that has a lot of cloud. So this is one of the examples. So apparently dehaze in the new version, they improved it. So let's see the improvement. So if I slide the dehaze, yeah, I know, I understand what they mean by that. They actually make it less aggressive than the previous one. The previous one kind of gave too much of a contrast, in my opinion. This one seems to be very delicate and protecting the color and the contrast. Let's try another example. This is a good image because it has a lot of haze. So if I go up and down, yeah, it does a very good job. It's not that aggressive. Nice. Very nice. Then you have color, all the typical pre-filter. You can go over it and then pick your, medicine. We have the individual profile. Then you have the individual semi-profile. For instance, you can select any of these, let's say memory color 2, while changing from V2 compatible, natural, faithful, monochrome. So again, sharpening, I have the default. I am not a big fan of sharpness anyway, because I like nice image. I don't need super sharp image. Noise reduction, I'm going to make another video very soon to see if there is any improvement than the previous version, but I suspect there are not much of a, improvement on that department. Again, remind you, I use Silkypix purely for its overall image quality. I'm not a psychopath that loves the best noise reduction and best sharpening. So otherwise, you can select fine detail. Fine detail, it's pretty strong noise reduction in my opinion. And you can separately select the level of shadow noise reduction, standard, a little strong, or very strong. Let's say very strong. So it will be impacting on this dark area. Then you have the white balance fine adjustment. So again, it's like a global overall tint. Let's go back to our tutorial somewhere over here and then go back. So if I move around, you see that it's slapping on the color that you're selecting. So depends on what type of tint that you are looking for. So this is how it works. I would recommend you to go back to default because, I'm not really that much of a, again, I try to take my image at the very beginning as good as possible. So these kind of tools are those who really love photo editing. I understand. For them, you have a choice. Then you have the famous curve, my favorite. I would rather use like a preset, or you can individually, select your contrast. Remind you, I recommend you to use the not linear, but more curve, because the linear, unfortunately, if you select it, it goes crazy. It's not very smooth. So curve is much better. It's nice and smooth. Then you have the highlight controller. What is it? Let's try with the preset. Now, when you go to the highlight controller, it works only with the extreme highlight area or highlight in general. So I'm going to select to the most bright area of this image, which is this white flower and this brightest area next to the globe. Then I'm going to try to select each preset. So highlight for sunset. Pay attention to the histogram as well, if you can. So default highlight for sunset. So it's kind of reduced a significant amount of highlight, but not only that, it reduced the slider to chroma all the way to as low as possible and saturation quite down. So it's good if you want to protect your highlight. Now, what happens if you go to hue priority? Hue priority, remember, hue is color. So it's actually made it more bright even. You see that? It's changing. I'm going back and forth. Highlight for sunset, hue priority. Highlight for sunset, hue priority. Pay attention to the color checker as well. I'm going to zoom in for you. Again, default, highlight for sunset, hue priority. Then I'm going to go to saturation priority, hue, saturation, hue, saturation. Then I'm going to go to the luminance priority. So luminance priority is actually make it the bright of the bright. So if I click, what's happening? It's taking the slide all the way to luminance. Saturation didn't change. And even the protection of the dynamic range, whatever left, went back to 0. So basically you're saying that in this image, I don't care about anything else, but my highlight has to be whatever it is or more, where the saturation priority should be generally the opposite. So it's when the slider all the way to saturation, chroma all the way to chroma, the slider as well. Hue priority, I have to guess, it remains the same with the chroma. However, the hue saturation changes. If I slowly move to the saturation, it does not change much. So this is generally important when you're trying to be very fussy. Yeah, I use the word fussy. Judge me. Let's say this flower, but the color of this flower that is impacted by the highlights. So you really want to be super duper fussy about it, then you have these tools. Now I'm going to go back to default. If I go to saturation all the way or hue all the way, you have this very little change, so that's fine. Dynamic range, remember, all the way to the +6 EV, it's essentially highlight slider with steroid. Seriously, I'm not even kidding. Highlight, it's like a highlight, but even more powerful. Fine color controller. That's essentially those who are, these days, this is like one of the common tools. This is essentially the HSL tool. Simple as that. It's a HSL tool in DxO. You have the exact same tool in Adobe Lightroom. You have the exact same tool in the Capture One. This is like one of the tools these days they really are proud of. DxO literally spend money on marketing with their HSL slider. So pick a color, let's say, or select from this color wheel. If you select color, you select most of the green, then change the hue if you want to more green area or more kind of orange area if you want. But it's not very aggressive, which is a very good thing. Very, very good thing. But if you want to, you can even change it by clicking the point and moving around. You can select the saturation of the color, lightness of the color, make it super duper dark. You see that it's changing, or super duper bright. But what I like about this thing is that it's quite reasonable. They are not very aggressive. So that's a nice thing. Now there is another one, advanced. So advanced, actually you select a color from the color checker. I'm going to zoom in. And either I can select the color checker or this flower. Now you can actually go crazy with this thing. Let's say you want to select the color to Disneyland. So if you want to create an animation of Disney, you can, you can have fun. I'm going to be a bit more precise with my choice, like there. Now let's change the color to hue. You see that it's changing the hue completely, and you can do the same thing with the saturation and lightness. So you can select the individual color if you want to with the advanced tool. Again, it's much better doing a subtle change. If you want to do locally, I recommend you to use the local adjustment. But you have the, preset, sky blue emphasis, focus on the sky, green emphasis, sunset orange emphasis, or easing orange saturation. Well, this means, can I be honest? They means nothing to me. They are useful, but I'm not that technical guy. Lens separation controller, essentially it allows you to fix vignette, distortion, chromatic aberration, and lens profile. Because it's a macro four third, it's already been fixed. Rotation, I already showed you. rotation. I already showed you the perspective controller. I did not show you the V and H perspective. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. What it does pretty much this. So up and down, left and right. So horizontal, vertical. So either, you have a lot of manual way to fix your perspective. Again, for that, DxO is pretty convenient because just one click and you're good to go. But this is very good if you have patience and you know what you're doing. Then you have effects. Effects is very useful for portrait. So I'm going to select a portrait. And in this case, I'm going to select, I don't really care honestly, but anything, this one. Now, there is a list, small, medium, large. So what it does is basically make the skin quite smooth. I'm going all the way up. See that it makes the skin quite smooth, which is very ideal for portrait. And then you can even make it even more aggressive if you want. Even more aggressive if you want. You see that a lot of marks are quite gone. So before, after, before, after, before, after, before, after. I can continue. And I'm very surprised because the previous version, it was impacting the hair. In this case, the hair color are not very impacted. However, effect can be slightly too aggressive. Let's change an image to... Let's change an image to this one. So I'm going to go all the way to 100. Of course, you're not going to use the 100. I mean, that would be ridiculous. Now zoom in. So before, after, before, after. So it's very subtle. Medium, large. So you see that it helps with all the freckles on the skin, all the marks. So I highly recommend you to try it on your own. Default. Add noise. Why would you add noise? Because, add noise is essentially give you a little bit more grainy and natural look. Just to show you an effect, I'm going to go all the way to 100. You see that it has this nice grainy look, and you can even go crazy to like Kodak ISO 3200. I wouldn't go there, of course, but you have this option. Blur shape periphery. What kind of language is this? Actually, it gives you some sort of look as such. Hang on a second. I'm going there. I'm going to show you the example directly, if I have one. There you go. This is a good image. Now, if I zoom out, let's say I did some auto adjustment, it's done. Then I turn on the blur sharp periphery. I select where I want it to be used. And let's say if I want to make it blur, I'm going to do the maximum. Does it remind you of something? It has this toy camera tool effect, some sort of toy camera tool effect. So I can make it a bit more precise with the precision. So you can see that it's doing a circular effect. An area of effect, you can make it less strong or very strong if you want. And opposite of blur is sharpen. So you can make it extra mega sharp. But why would you do that to your life? Now you have the monochrome controller. The moment you turn it on, you have this monochrome filter. Then you can fix the lightness, brightness. It's better actually to show you this effect with my color checker. So each time when you turn it on, let's say you don't want the color filter, but you want the lightness, just it. Each time you select the red, it only affects the red flower, the red anything, and so on. If you select green, it makes the green much darker, much brighter. Red is the best example because it's the dominant color here. So you have the red super bright or super dark. Or you can just slap on a filter. So that red filter will only filter out the red. Opposite is blue. That makes the red even darker. Those who are into the black and white photography, you would love this slider. Underwater controller. This is similar to this tool that on the top that I showed you a long time ago, like 1,000 years ago. Let's see if I have the turtles. Where are my turtles? There you go. If I zoom out a little bit and initialize, you can select this slider to make it as dark as red or opposite. Then here's the thing. If you select the tint, hang on a second, I'm going to go back. If the color is green, don't go to green. Probably you should go to blue. And the restoration, then blue, then green. So you can play with all this slider and then fix your color underwater images. I'm not really into underwater images for now, so this is not my concern. I recommend you, if you have your own underwater images, I sincerely want you to try. And if you have anything to share, please do share. So this is a image, the preset, so auto white balance for underwater. I don't really like it. It's strange. If I go to my this turtle image, and if I click, so this is auto adjustment, of course. So if I initialize and then select the automatic version, does it fix it? Not necessarily. Before I finish this thing, this picture reminds me of in the tone, not the tone, in the tone area, the new dehaze. So if I now try to dehaze this image, it does it very well. Of course, it has too much of a green dominance. So I could go back to underwater photo and probably use the red slider to counterbalance, though, not really useful. Probably I would also have to go back to white balance and again, probably use the color deflation here as well and little bit on the and multi-source. Well. Finally, export. Again, if I want to export this image, you can either click develop, go to develop and select the file type to TIFF or JPEG, or you can go to settings and make sure you select TIFF, Silkypix default or maximum for retouching, such as 16-bit, or you can go to and open another app and open in, for example, Nick Silver FX. I am tired because I've been talking for 1 hour, 18 minutes. I gave everything, guys. So if this effort means anything to you, but guys, I would love you more if you could help me out. Please. And enjoy this beautiful software. I love this. I hope you do. Take care of yourself and bye-bye.